Erev Tov, everyone. The parsha begins, Vayar Balak ben Tzipor. So it says, Vayar, he saw. And then the Torah says that it was because Kol Asher Asa Yisrael, Mincha Maariv Shiur. So then the verb Vayar doesn't really fit, because he was not a witness to the wars. He heard about it. So like it says, by Yisro, by Yishma Yisro Kohen Midian. So here it should say, by Yishma Balak. Balak heard. He was informed. His intelligence service told him. What does it say? Vayar, he saw. So if we look at the parshas that we have covered here until now in Chumash Bamidbar, we see that this occurs a few times. By the Meraglim. So they saw the fruit, they saw the giants, they saw. And Rashi points out that by Korach, so Rashi quoting the Medrash, so he also uses the verb, Ma'ro'a Korach l'shtus kozu. What did he see? And here by Bullock, it says that he saw. So the Mefarshim all want to deal with what is hidden here by the use of this verb to see, when it doesn't really mean to see, it means to conclude or to have an opinion or to interpret. And there's a common denominator here, the Mefarshim say, to all the troubles. One of the things that we see in Tanakh over and over again is there's a problem called a Novi Sheker, a prophet that is false. In other words, he predicts things the Torah says. How can you differentiate a Novi Emes from a Novi Sheker? Is unfortunately, you have to wait and see what the prophecy, how did it turn out to be? And by a Novi Sheker will always be wrong. His nevuah will prove false. Now, usually he's done enough damage before it's proven that the consequences of his nevuah sheker are false and dangerous. The nature of people throughout the ages and in every society is to want to know the future. That's true in every field of endeavor. So we're not so much interested in what the world looked like 50 years ago, but we want to know what it will look like 50 years hence. even though the likelihood of our being there is not necessarily strong. But the nature of people is they want to know the future. And because they want to know the future, they create theories. They create ideas. And then many times those ideas or theories turn out to be destructive. In our time, we can say that openly about Marxism. He said what was going to happen. The workers would revolt, and there would be socialism, and socialism with the communism, and communism would lead to Olam Haba. Fiction. But look at what happened. Look how many millions, tens of millions have been affected by it. It's the idea to know the future. So by the Meraglim, they said, we look in the future and we see Kilo Nuchala. We can't conquer Eretz Yisrael. That's what our crystal ball shows us, so to speak. Chazaku mimenu. It's too strong, too big a bite of the apple, we can't do it. Moshe never asked them for predictions. Moshe asked them to describe the present situation. It's sufficient for us to know the present, to be able to interpret what is, without having to delve into what will be. Because the future is always never what we think it's going to be. No one predicts natural disasters or financial disasters or diplomatic disasters or the outcomes of elections. The future is always shrouded in mystery. So by Korach, Rashi, quoting the Medrash, says openly, Ma'ro l'shtuzu, what did he see in his future? He saw that Shmuel Hanavi is coming from him. Well, if Shmuel Hanavi is going to be a descendant of his, he must be the greatest, right? If that's the great-grandson, you can imagine what the great-grandfather was going to be. You know, I remember we have a member here in Shul. He's moved away from the neighborhood. Dr. Robert Aumann, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics about 20 years ago. And so when he won the prize, so the Shul sponsored a Kiddush in his honor. We got a Nobel Prize winner, you know, that's davening with us. And they asked me to say a few words. So I said, if Aumann is the caliber of the members of the shul, you can only imagine what the rabbi must be. So that's the kal vachomer that Korach made for himself. Because he looked into the future. He saw Shmuel Hanavi. And somehow he misread it, misinterpreted it completely. So Bullock also, the first name Vayar Bullock, what did he see? Psodik HaKohen Lublin says here a tremendous idea. Bullock saw that he is an ancestor of David HaMelech. Because Bullock is the father of Eglon Melech Moab in Tanakh. And Eglon is the father of Ruth, and Ruth is the grandmother of David, great-grandmother of David. So Balak so he looks in the future and he sees that David's going to come from him, and Shlomo is going to come from him, and that the Beis Hamikdash will come from him. So he says, then I certainly can rule over Israel. I can certainly prevent them from causing me any trouble, because you see, their whole future is dependent on me. If it wouldn't be for me, they have no future. So that's Vayar. Always in the Torah, it sees. That's a problem. Because whenever we deal with the future, it's a very tricky situation. So the Meforshim say, by Avraham Avinu, it says, Vayar es amokom merachok. He saw Hara Moriah from afar. So what does it mean from afar? He saw that it would be something in the far distant future. But that did not in any way influence what he was going to, because if he saw it in the far distant future, he would say, how can I sacrifice Yitzchak? Then there's no future. How can we go to the Akedah? So he didn't let his knowledge or his hope or his vision of the future, which was a vision from afar, affect what he had to do now. And the Gemara always compares Avram to Bilam. We see Ma bein Talmidov shel Avram Avinu, the Mishnah in Avos, Ma bein Talmidov shel Bilam Orosha. The difference here, if you put Avram and Bilam next to each other, they would both be members of the Moetzes, and you wouldn't be able to differentiate between them. Bilam is no small person. But Talmidov, see what comes from them. See what their disciples look like. See what their legacy is. See what nations they create. There you see great differences. You see what comes from Avram and what comes from Bilam. So again, the Torah does not want us to live in the past, and it does not want us to live in the future either. We live in the present and what is. And if we do that, then we live realistically, and we live al pi Torah. And whatever the Torah tells us, that's what it is. The Gemara says that Chizkiyahu Melech took ill. The Navi Yeshaya came to visit him. They were related. Yeshaya was his uncle. And Chizkiyahu wanted to know what was his sin, why he was took ill so suddenly. And Yeshaya told him, because you never got married, you didn't want to have children. So Chizkiyahu said, I didn't want to have children because I saw, in prophecy, I saw that my child would be Menashe, who would be the most evil king of Judah. So I didn't want to bring such a child into the world, so I never got married. So the Navi answered him, the Gemara says, what heaven is hid, the future, it's Lamalach. What's in your business? You can't play God. You can't say what's going to be the future. You have to do in the present. In the present, you have a mitzvah to get married. You have a mitzvah to produce a family. That's what you have to do. How the future will play out, and that is not really your concern. It's a very hard lesson for people to learn because people want to control even hundreds of years after they're no longer here. But the Torah doesn't agree. So the undoing of Bullock was Vayar because he's living in the future. He sees what's going to be here. He's going to be the grandfather of David. Oh boy. And that leads him to make this terrible error of hiring Bilam and dooming himself to eternal shame thereby. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Rotza Kodesh Baruch Hu Lezakas Es Yisrael Leficha Chayv Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Adonai Chavei Tzman Tzidka Yadil Torah V'Yadil.